I'm going to read to you, my name's Greg Withrow, the teachings of my teacher. And she wrote The Lightning and the Sun, Dr. Devi. So I'm just going to start there so that people will have a reference point to begin to understand where I'm coming from philosophically. The Lightning and the Sun. The history of man, like the history of the rest of the living, is but a detail in a cosmic history, without beginning or end. The privileged ones, the wise, are those few who, being fully aware of the increasing worthlessness of present-day mankind, know how little there is to be lost in the coming crash, and look forward to it with joyous expectation, as a necessary condition of a new beginning, a new golden age. The old religions have become devices in the hands of clever men in power to lull the simpletons into permanent obedience. We believe that man's value, as every creature's value, ultimately lies not in the mere intellect, but in the spirit, that which is true and beautiful, beyond all manifestation, which remains timeless and therefore unchangeable. The capacity to think for oneself was and always will be the privilege of a minority once recognized as a natural elite and respected. About those two main glories of democracy, individual freedom and equality, the first is a lie. The second, an absurdity. Recalling some of the most spectacular horrors of history, the burning of heretics and witches at the stake, the wholesale massacre of heathens, and other repulsive manifestations of Christian civilization in Europe and elsewhere, modern man is filled with pride in the progress accomplished since the Dark Ages. Modern cold-blooded atrocities become all known only when the hidden powers in control, the press, the wireless, and the cinema, decide for ends anything but humanitarian that they should be known. When their story is considered to be good propaganda because of the current indignation it is expected to create and the new incentive it is expected to give the war effort. Modern man is a moral coward. He wants the advantages of violent intolerance, which is only natural, but he shuns the responsibility of it. In antiquity, even the slave had hours of leisure and merriment that were all his own. He had the games of dice in the shade of the columns of his master's portico, his coarse jokes, his free chatter, his free life outside his daily routine. The modern slave has not the privilege of loitering completely carefree for half an hour. His so-called leisure itself is filled with almost compulsory entertainment, often as dreary as his work. He is not openly bought and sold, he is just taken, and taken not by a man in some way superior to himself, but by a huge, impersonal system without either a body to kick, or a soul to damn, or a head to answer for its mischief. But more cowardly and more hypocritical, perhaps than anything else, is modern man's behavior towards living nature, and in particular toward the animal kingdom. There is no getting away from the fact that kindness to animals does not ultimately depend upon the teachings of any religion or philosophy, but is one of the distinctive characteristics of the truly superior races. This is the age in which falsehood is termed truth, and truth persecuted as falsehood, or mocked as insanity, in which the exponents of truth, the divinely inspired leaders, the real friends of their race and of all the living, the godlike men, are defeated, and their followers humbled, and their memories slandered, while the masters of lies are hailed as saviors, the age in which every man and woman is in the wrong place, and the world dominated by inferior individuals, bastardized races, and vicious doctrines, all part and parcel of an order of inherent ugliness far worse than complete anarchy, the age characterized from time immemorial as the Dark Age, the era of gloom, Ragnarok. Aided by staggering scientific achievements which could be put to use for any purpose, man has throughout history become more and more violent. It cannot be otherwise until the violent and the complete destruction of that which we call today's civilization opens for the world a new age of truth, a new golden age. Until then, violence, under one form or another, is unavoidable. It is the very law of life in a fallen world. But violence is not a bad thing in itself. It is worth its while when those that pursue it do so in keeping with an ideology expressing timeless, impersonal, more than human truth, rooted in a clear understanding of the unchanging laws of life and destined to appeal to all those who in a fallen world still retain within their hearts an invincible yearning for perfect order. Moreover, as the era of gloom of which we are living proceeds, growing darker and fiercer year after year, it becomes more and more impossible to avoid using violence in the service of truth. One can say with more and more certainty as the Dark Age goes on that the godlike men of action are defeated, at least for the time being, not for having been too ruthless, but not for having been ruthless enough, for not having killed off their fleeing enemies to the last man, for not having silenced both the squeamish millions of hypocrites and their masters, the clever producers of atrocity tales, by more substantial violence, more complete exterminations. From all of this, it is quite clear that to condemn violence indiscriminately is to condemn the very struggle of the forces of light and life against the forces of disintegration, a struggle all the more heroic and all the more desperate as the world rushes on towards its doom. Whether consciously or unconsciously, whether they be thoroughly wicked or blind through congenital stupidity, the workers of disintegration wage war upon the men of gold and steel with unabated hellish fury. It is prompted by their hatred rooted in envy, the hatred of worthless weaklings for the strong for no other reason than that they are strong, the hatred of ugly souls for the naturally beautiful, the hatred of the rabble for the noble, the real aristocracy of the world, such is more and more the widespread violence of our times.